to create the auto fire, I need to create a couple of variables in the player. So these are numbers that are contained within the player object that the game code will reference. So right click on the player, instance variables, and we're going to add a number variable. First one is going to be cooldown. Okay, and we're going to add another one called fire rate, and they're both numbers, both values.
So they appear now in the properties
window here at the side. You've got cooldown rate, cooldown and fire rate. So the cooldown is going to be used as like a timer or a counter. So when you press spacebar, cooldown will kind of increase its value, and then when it reaches the fire rate, it'll reset. I'll explain how this works when we get it up and running. We need to change this condition. So right click on it, replace condition, and instead of on key pressed, we want on keys down, which is this one here, and then choose spacebar again. Done. So as long as the spacebar is pressed, it will create this player bullet object, and we can have a look at what it will do if we leave it like that. So now I'm holding down space and it's making this continuous stream of laser fire, which could be useful if you wanted to create something like that, like a kind of a beam, say, for instance. But what we want, the fire rate is just too great, so we want it to just produce a number of bullets rather than basically a bullet every frame of the game. Right, to use cooldown as a kind of timer, we need to create a sub event in this. So right click and add a sub event player, and we're comparing the variable instance cooldown is equal to value -1. Okay, and then it will create the bullet. And we also need to set the variable, there we go, set value cooldown to 0. So if space is down within the one frame of the game, it will be -1, it will create bullet, and then it will set cooldown to 0. So to make cooldown sort of count up, we need to add player event compare instance variable cooldown is equal or greater than 0. We're going to add player add to the variable something called DT, which is delta time, and it's basically a value that goes, I think, between 0 and 1 every frame of the game, so it'll just keep counting up if its cooldown is set to 0. So this is the way it's working. I know this is slightly sort of complicated, but so space is pressed down, cooldown is -1, it's set to 0 after it's created the bullet, and then it'll count up in delta time. So what we need to do now is make it reset back to 0. So we need to do another variable compare. So instance compare instance variable. This time the cooldown is greater than or equal to, and we want to reference here the fire rate variable. So it's self, referring to its own instance, and then fire rate. Done. So the fire rate currently is set to 0, so what we'll do is we'll set it to just 1 for now, and when it reaches greater than 1, then that variable, the cooldown variable, set value cooldown equals -1. So this is setting up like a kind of a little kind of timer that runs on the delta time. So when space is pressed, cooldown counts up. When it reaches the fire rate, it resets and then produces a bullet. So let's just test that out. Yeah, so it's producing a bullet now every 1 of delta time, which is about 1 second. Okay, so what we can do now is set the fire rate. So if we set it to 0.33 and test it, yeah, we're getting a bit faster now. I want it a little bit faster than that. Let's try 0.15. Yeah, that's perfect. So obviously that creates then a variable you can play with. It could be part of a power up, for instance. So you could pick this the power up and it changes the fire rate. So this is a very kind of efficient little timer system. I'm going to tweak this fire system a bit more because I want to actually produce 2 bullets. So I can go to the player. I'm going to double click on it so I can look at the sprite. Let's zoom in a bit. And I want to create some more image points from these kind of machine guns here. So I'm going to add image point 3, stick it on there, image point 4 and stick it on there. Right click and then apply to the whole animation. There we go. With bank right and bank left, I want to change it slightly, so I'm going to add. I've just realised I'm not putting image points for the particle system. Not that I need to, because it's not actually activated here, but it will make image points 3 and 4 kind of redundant otherwise. So I'll have to do it for the same for everything else. Apply to the whole animation. Apply to the whole animation. Yeah, so I want to produce the bullets from these points here. Let's check that's all good. Okay. So I need to change where the bullet is created. So if I double click on that, and then I can edit it. So instead of the player X and Y, I want player. Let's start again. Player dot image point X, and in brackets which image point, so it's image point 3. Let's copy and paste that, and this change that to Y. Okay, I want to create another bullet, so I'm copy and paste that. Let's drag that up to there and change this to image point 4. And I also want to change the on the bullet object, where I can find it, the blend mode, because it's not very visible. I'm going to change it to additive, and let's just test that out. So now I'm producing 2 bullets. The idea is that they're kind of it's going to be like a machine gun, so I want to add a little bit of wobble to it as well. So I'm going to add another action to it, which is the player bullet and the angle of motion. And what I'm going to set that to is self. So it's let's find the bullet angle of motion plus, and I'm going to add random range now. Of -1 and 1. Just going to put that up here. I'm going to copy that, paste it, put that under here, so it'll produce that bullet, and it will apply this kind of random function, so it will produce a variant in the bullet motion of -1 or 1 + 1 degrees, and it will create a second bullet and do exactly the same thing. Okay, so if we test that out, so now they've got a bit of variation in the bullet as it sprays out. So I mean, you could use this to create like a sort of shotgun effect. If, say for instance, you produce like 5 or 6, 8 bullets at one time, and then set them all kind of like at random angles, sort of spraying out. Another tweak I want to do is add some muzzle flash to when it fires. So I'm going to insert another object, sprite, in game, and let's load up. And where is it? Flash. Let's zoom in there. Yeah, image point's right. That's fine. I need to. I don't need to worry about the angle of it. Okay. I'm going to rename that mFlash. Let's go into the event sheet, and then we're going to add an event system, and every tick we want to position the muzzle flash, set position to another object, and the player object, and the image point 3. Done. So now we have, you can just see it there, it's quite subtle, but there's a little bit of muzzle flash. I might make that a bit bigger actually, I might scale that up. Let's go to the layout, let's change the size of it, let's make it a little bit bigger, let's do 12 by 12, and let's set the blend mode to additive. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that's a bit better, it's more like it. Okay, so I'm going to clone this by right click on it, clone, and then it appears up in the object types here in the project window. Let's drag that in here, change the size of it again, make it the same as the other one, so 12 by 12, there we go, whoops, and change blend mode to additive, and then copy and paste this, but instead of mFlash we'll right click and replace object. Oh, it's not letting me do that, so let's just make it from scratch. So add mFlash2, set position to another object, player, and the image point this time is 4. So let's just test that. So now we've got those 2 bits of muzzle flash. So what I want to do with them now is make them flash when I press the button. So I'm going to set the initial opacity on these 2 muzzle flashes to nothing, so they appear invisible. Okay, and then in the event sheet, when the spacebar is pressed, the muzzle flash has set the opacity to 100, so it'll become visible. Let's just copy and paste that, and then replace the object with the other muzzle flash, so it'll become visible. And then I want to copy and paste this cooldown. Then I want to copy and paste this cooldown. There you go. Variable check, and I'm just going to edit that. And so the fire rate, I'm going to divide, or multiply in this case, by 0.5. So that's essentially dividing it by 2. Okay, done. And instead of setting the player cooldown rate there, what I'm going to do is delete that and add the action mFlash, and where's the appearance? Set the opacity back to 0, and then copy that, and then replace the action. Replace the object to flash 2. Okay, so when the spacebar is pressed, opacity sets to 100, and then when it's half the fire rate is reached on the cooldown, then it'll go back to being invisible again. So let's just test that out, and it should flash. There we go. So that's set to the fire rate now. It looks pretty cool. So when we combine that with the machine gun sound, it should be quite effective.